This is Coffee with Kelly, a dynamic podcast that's dedicated to driving positive change in school safety. I'm your host, Ethan Woodman, Product Marketing Specialist for Crisis Go, and I'm joined by my esteemed colleague, Kelly Moore, Senior School Safety Specialist for Crisis Go. Our mission is to empower you with essential knowledge, tools, and inspiration required to foster a safer and more secure school environment. We hope this podcast will be the catalyst for transformation in your schools. Join us as we continue to dive into the world of school safety. Good morning, Kelly.
Good morning, Ethan. I'm just letting you know my mic is set up properly, so you should be getting.
That's good. I want your voice to come in nice and clear for our audience.
You should be getting my voice in all its glory.
That's what we want to call it, I guess. All right. So this last week has been interesting.
Last couple of weeks have been interesting, right?
It's getting wild out there for sure. I will first. So we'll do a little bit about news stuff. So kind of three different things. Well, two are similar in nature. So the first one's actually local to me, and I'll just give you. I won't go through the whole letter, but basically a school sent out a letter to a parent indicating that, so this parent had a kid in special ed, and they did a psychological review, I guess, on the kid,
assessment.
Yeah, an assessment. Mm-hmm. And so the letter basically says, we now found out that the person that did the assessment actually didn't hold any credentials.
Any credentials, or so the reason I'm clarifying that is because
now I gotta look at it. Give me a second.
Because you can have, let's go to a lawyer. You can have a law degree, and you can even be a practicing attorney in one state, but not another state.
Okay, so I guess it was may not have been properly licensed.
Okay.
By the state at the time of evaluation. So then they basically say, we have to redo the assessment at no charge to you, but we have to redo the assessment.
Right. So are people getting charged for those assessments when they're done by?
That's what I was wondering. I'm like, hold up, wait. That'd be kind of crazy to me.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, I guess it's
what's
probably
the purpose of it?
Well, it's to determine needs and supports and maybe provide some interventions depending on the circumstances. So what we're trying to do is find a path forward to make that student successful. If they have psychological, emotional issues, learning disabilities, those types of things, we have to do an assessment to come up with their IEP, individual education plan. Right. So, and the reason I emphasize IEP is because what they're really doing, and I'm going to connect this to my world, is they're creating a plan of action to correct or mitigate or support a concern. And so when you talk about doing a behavioral or a psychological assessment, you're trying to find the gaps in the general education process and what this student needs, and fill those gaps with support, right? I'll tell you, they're not always right. I'll use my son as an example. My son had ADD, still has ADD, probably some dyslexia, but not as bad as I have it. So he struggled in school, and he got distracted very easy by other things. They couldn't hold his attention, and they didn't really tell us about it or make any statements about it in elementary school. But they did say when he transitioned from elementary to middle school that they wanted to do an assessment on him. which I thought was kind of weird because they had him for 5 or 6 years, and now all of a sudden it's going to be a problem when we switch him. But so he tested very low on a scale of how successful he was going to be in middle school. So they put him in a special ed class, and we said, okay, if that's what the assessment says, then we should follow the assessment. And when he got in there, we asked how things were going after a couple of weeks, and he says, "Dad, this is crazy." And I go, "What do you mean? Is it helping?" He goes, "They're having me help teach the other kids how to spell elementary words, literally like cat, dog, run." And I said, "Okay, is it helping you though?" And he goes, "Dad, I don't want to be there." Okay. So we called for an IEP meeting, and we got in with them, and they said, "Look, this is where he tests. This is where he belongs. And this is just the way it is." And that's not just the way it is. What's the worst case scenario? You probably heard this from me before. What's worst case scenario that if we take him out of this class and put him back in the general education? I don't want to put him in AP classes. I don't want to put him in, these classes that he is going to absolutely fail, but put him back in the general mainstream education process. And they said, "Well, he's going to fail." And I said, "Maybe, but what's the worst case?" "Well, he's going to get ridiculed. He's going to get picked on, and it's going to impact him socially." And I said, "Is that it?" And they said, "Yeah." And I said, "He'll do fine with that. He's a likable kid. He's got a lot of friends, and he's also a big kid and a good athlete. So it doesn't have any issues socially. He's one of those kids that walks into a room and he's making friends right away. Nobody cares how intelligent he is or isn't. He's a smart kid. He just doesn't learn well." If that makes sense. And so we put him in there, and our next IEP meeting that we had for him was, "We don't know what to tell you." And I said, "What do you mean?" And they go, "We've never seen this before. He is successful. He's doing well." And I said, "Well, I'm glad it's working that way, but it's hard for me to believe that this is your success case. Only one, this is your first one." "Yeah, we've never seen it." That's crazy to me. But he just had to learn to focus differently. We had to assign his seat, make sure that he was focused up front. And at some point, it wasn't until later, I think he might have even graduated high school, he was having difficulty focusing in college, I think. And he said, "Can I go see a doctor? I think I need some medication." But I think it was all the way through high school before he got on any medication. And he's not on medication now. He was only on it for a couple of years. And he's a smart kid if he's interested.
Yeah.
Or if he has a driver. And the driver in this case was he wanted to play sports. So he had to do well if he wanted to play water polo.
I remember cases like that when I was playing on the school team. There'd be like a really good player, and he'd always, they'd be nervous because like their grades were low, and they wouldn't be allowed to play because their grades were low. I'm like, dang, like, you're a really good player, man. Like, kind of stinks to not have you on the field.
This was our rule because he was playing club water polo. They didn't have a water polo team at the school for that age group. But yeah. So there are assessments, and they are good, but you have to keep on top of them. Just like, don't let the school blindly lead their action, because they're going to put everybody into they have so many that they're dealing with. They put everyone into this little pigeonhole, and it's not necessarily the best for your child. You know your child.
Yeah. So I'll move on to the next one, which is a kind of a similar theme, I guess. Not reviewing credentials well enough. So the story that probably everyone has heard because it's all over the news is the superintendent of the largest district in Iowa was, I'll say, removed from his position. Some articles say he stepped down, some say that they kind of took him from the position. So I don't really know what happened there, but anyways,
He was arrested by ICE, wasn't
he was arrested by ICE. So he had actually had like an order of some sort
he? Mm-hmm.
in May of 2024, basically of like, you need to get this resolved or you're going to get deported. It's funny because some articles say he stepped down, but then some articles say that when they arrested him, he had a loaded handgun on him
Mm-hmm.
and like thousands of dollars. And the other concerning thing that we were looking at before we click record was, in all of his biographies or LinkedIn profiles, he had down that he had, certifications or degrees from different universities. And some of these universities have stepped forward and said, yeah, we have no record of that.
Mm-hmm. So
So
it was also other like awards and accolades, right? To establish I'm the best.
superintendent of the
Yeah,
year, and then they're like, yeah,
yeah.
that we never gave that out to him. So he was just putting random stuff on there. My first question I think everyone asks is like, how
Mm-hmm.
how in the world does someone get into that high of a position in charge of 30,000 plus kids? I mean, that's crazy.
The short answer, and we'll get into the long answer shortly. The short answer is somebody failed to do their job,
I
right?
guess so.
So when you're
My
talking
goodness.
about failure to do your job, and this goes beyond just checking credentials, because we'll get into checking credentials and stuff, but you're failing to protect your kids when you don't do your job. And there are background requirements in every state for teachers, and almost everybody who has any significant contact with children in the school.
Mm,
And the backgrounds are different depending on the classification and the levels and the requirements of the district. But like, I had zero contact with kids when I worked at the school district.
hmm.
And I
Zero?
zero.
Like you weren't in the building with kids at all?
That was, well, I mean, I walked through a building, but I never, with the one exception, did I ever have contact and or control with a child,
Hmm.
because that wasn't my job.
Yeah.
My job was to talk to adults and administrators and safety people, parents, and those types. I can only think of one occasion where I had control over a child, and we talked about that story, and
Yeah. I already know which one you're talking about.
they had to do a background check on me. Oftentimes people get offended when you are asked to do a background check,
Which is so funny to me because, like, if it wasn't gonna pull up anything, why would I don't understand why that would be
because
offensive.
it's privacy, right? And
Yeah.
I'll tell you that I've held some pretty high level secret clearances because of some of the jobs that I've had, some of the positions I held in law enforcement. And so I get, it happens all the time. And when I was in human resources, when I did backgrounds, right? And I supervised people who did backgrounds, they would say, yeah, I don't need to fill out all this paperwork because I have a top secret clearance with the military. You need to fill it out. Yeah, but I still have a top secret clearance. So it doesn't, I don't care. I have to verify it, because if I don't verify it and you do something, you're going to get in trouble and I'm going to get in trouble.
Yep.
So I have to verify it, because I'm telling the people of the state of California that I've done my job. and that you are qualified to be a peace officer in the state of California. People shouldn't get offended. If you want to serve in a school, you in any capacity, and somebody says, "Hey, you need to get fingerprinted, you need to submit yourself to a background so that we can verify stuff," then you should do that, or not take the position. Don't apply for the position. I mean, it's that simple. Now, let's talk about credentials. I'm not sure you asked this directly to me this way, or I just interpreted this way. But when we were talking before, we pressed the record button. Do superintendents require a doctorate? I said, I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. But I think it's one of those expectations. If you are competing for the position, the highest full-time position in a school district, especially a large district, I think there's an expectation that you hold a doctorate of education or a doctorate, some sort of doctorate, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we talked about my position on degrees. I don't necessarily give you 100% credit just because you hold the degree. And the reason is I've been what I call the victim of several people who had doctorates who could not function and make their own decisions. I've had people who had in our sheriff's department who had a doctorate in a specific field of study, organizational leadership specifically. And when they came up with against a problem that was specifically around organizational leadership, they said, yeah, we can't, this isn't a problem we're going to be able to solve. Well, that's what your degree's in. You might not be able to solve it completely, but you can. There are very few problems that can't be solved, that just cannot be solved. So I've been a victim. So I don't give people carte blanche credit. Oh, you got a doctorate. Oh, you're so much smarter than I am. But the issue here is not whether there was a requirement for a degree.
Right.
It's that he lied about the degree and the credentials and the accolades and all of that. And he's had to have done that multiple times.
Yeah, because you don't just get into a superintendent role right off the bat. Like,
you don't graduate.
You'd have to be like,
you don't walk
he must
off
have
the
been like a
stage.
teacher and then like an admin or something, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
you don't just.
Yeah, and you don't walk off the stage in May from receiving your doctorate and say, okay, I'm a superintendent now. You had to work your way up. Generally speaking, there are other incentives that come along with your degree. So if you have a BA degree and then you get your master's, generally you get more money. And so there has to be this sort of validation. Say, I need a copy of your transcripts. I need a copy of your certificate, your degree. And there's ways that very quickly you can say, hey, we have this guy who says he has a degree. I mean, it literally is probably a 5-minute phone call, right? And he says he has a degree and he has these transcripts. Are they valid? When I had to validate my degrees when I was at the sheriff's office, I had to have the institution send a copy of my transcripts directly to the sheriff's office. I couldn't deliver them myself.
Yeah.
So I had to either call or whatever, order them up, pay $20 or whatever, and send them mine. So that the issue is we have obviously in these two instances, we have people who say they were qualified and they were not. And what does that mean when we allow those people to interact with our children, in control of our children? The issue for me is when we do what Kelly does, how does this impact the safety of our schools? What's the potential there? What's the potential? You tell me. I'm going to ask Ethan.
The potential of not doing good enough background check?
Not validating the background. Mm-hmm.
I mean, anyone can say that they're anyone and get in front of your kids.
It's right.
But, you know, yeah, I won't say the other thing you told me, but
we understand that we have people who are qualified who do bad things to our children.
Yeah. That's been proven. It's in the news.
It's all the time.
Basis.
Yeah. And we talked about the number of teachers who, on average, are arrested, educators who are arrested for inappropriate relations with students. On average, that's just shy of about 50. So these are people who have qualified, who are being verified. Now, that's a it just, to me,
that's just
is
sick.
Incomprehensible that is occurring.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that we do in law enforcement, we still are not 100%, but almost everybody in law enforcement does a psychological examination to determine their psychological, emotional stability to do what it is that is required of a law enforcement officer. Almost everyone across, I'd be shocked in this day and age if there's agencies that don't do a psychological examination. Many do polygraphs. We did polygraphs all the time on our, I submitted myself to polygraphs to get hired by the sheriff's department. They're not 100%, but there's certainly effective in weeding out some significant problems.
Yeah.
And I will tell you that whatever you believe in the psychological examinations and their accuracy, I had a pretty good relationship with our police psychologist. It's a specialty. I had a pretty good doctor, and we would talk often. And he would say, okay, Kelly, the numbers are good. He's within the range number wise, but you're going to have some issues with him. And these are the issues. And he was right almost every time that we would have issues.
Wow.
But when we have somebody who meets the criteria and we have all the other stuff is good, we just have to take that note. You can't disqualify somebody if they meet it. And so, because you've set those standards, we just have to look at it. But are we taking the right steps to prevent? And this is where this, in both cases, of people who may or may not have the qualifications and the credentials to work with our kids. Are we doing our job to validate and verify what it is they're saying? Going back to the question, do superintendents are they required to have a doctorate? That's not the question here. It doesn't matter. The point that matters is they lied about their credentials. So now their integrity is just shot.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean,
and if they're willing to lie about that, what else are they willing to lie about? And what else are they willing to risk? Because they put a lot, most of us would say that was a pretty big risk to do that. But we know that there are people who are doing that.
I mean, his risk was paying off. He's getting paid $300,000 a year.
More than.
It's crazy.
It's crazy, right? But the idea that could have been prevented with a couple of phone calls.
Yeah.
To just take the resume and say, and I don't know the schools, call the university whom he says he has a doctorate for,
Yeah.
and say, hey, we have Dr. Jones here, says he has a doctorate from your institution. Nope. What? Yeah,
Red
no, we don't have
flag.
any record of it. We don't have any record of it. And is there the possibility of mistakes? Yes.
Sure.
But their job is to accredit each and every one, create a standard, and make sure that everyone that graduates meets that standard.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you're going to rely on the credentials as being the piece of paper that allows you to have people make assumptions about your experience, which is what it is, right? They're saying you have a doctorate in this, so you must be qualified. And
Mm-hmm.
we've qualified you because you went through our program and you passed our standards, and here's your credentials. So you're passing your reputation on as an institution, right? So it means, I think it's meaning less now, but it means something different when you graduate from an Ivy League school than you do from the community college.
Yeah.
Because they have these high standards and so forth. And in order for them to keep those standards, they have to validate and they have to do it. So there is the ability to make mistakes, but they're pretty good and they'll stand by, yep, we don't have that guy as a graduate of our institution. Or he did graduate, but not with the degree he said he did, which is just as bad. I know what degrees I have.
Yeah, right.
Right.
Yeah.
So did he hurt or put any of our kids in jeopardy? That has yet to be determined. But the fact that he was willing to put somebody himself at risk like that means he would also likely put other people at risk.
Right. If you're willing to do it to yourself.
Yeah, it's an
only makes
integrity
sense.
issue.
Yeah, for sure.
It's an integrity issue. And there's no evidence of this, but is he skimming money? Is he bringing his friends in and overlooking their degrees? There's all these things that are possible, right? And this could have been prevented with literally a 5-minute phone call.
Imagine being a parent in that district. I mean, they must be livid.
Yeah.
Can you imagine that meeting afterwards? Like the board meetings where they allow people, the community to come in? I mean, that thing must have been packed.
So here's the other thing that I learned very quickly in HR when I was a background investigator. And there's less being said about this than the dude who was arrested and discovered that he didn't have a degree, or the degrees that he said he had, is the person who made the hiring decision and the recommendation. And I'm not going to go into that. If you want to look at all of the speculation, go online and it should be easy to find. But I know of many, many instances where people have staked their reputation, because that's what it is, when they make a recommendation based upon somebody's character.
Yeah, I mean, that applies to any job. It's like,
right?
Hey, your buddy's like, hey, can you recommend me? And it's like, yeah, but like
of course,
you're lazy and your work ethic is horrible. If I recommend you, they're gonna wonder why I recommended you.
If you know, and that's my point. So if you recommend, and this is actually law in many states, and it might have gone federal, but I'm not 100% on this. If you knowingly give somebody, you're an employer, and you had a former employee and you liked their work and they asked you for a recommendation at their next job because they were moving or whatever, would you give me a recommendation? Yes. If you knowingly give a recommendation that is false and exaggerated, you could be held liable for damages to the other company. And
Yeah.
this was a practice I hated. And I saw it happen many, many times, where there was somebody who had an issue at one agency, and rather than cause a news storm and address the issue that they had with this person, they would allow them to quit and not fire them. They would allow them to retire and not fire them, and just move on quietly, so that we don't have to get into this big public relations nightmare that could possibly occur. And then they said, if you do that, we would give you a recommendation at your next job.
What?
Yep. Because maybe It wasn't something illegal. Maybe it wasn't something, it was just crappy work, right? And it just said, dude,
even that.
Right? But you get you get the point. And it was often said, I wouldn't hold you back.
You're not holding them back, they're holding themselves back.
I want to get rid of my problem.
Oh, man. And give it to someone else.
Yeah, so this was a huge thing when you were talking about transfers in the military.
I mean, that's what we do with students, right? So
right is, well, that's under a privacy thing, right? Is here's the file. I'll give you the file, but I'm not going to make any recommendations because that's between you and the student. In the military, you used to say, hey, yeah, this guy's great, and move them along so that that person was no longer your problem. It's crazy, but I personally don't make recommendations. If somebody says, hey, Kelly, can you? I have to really know that person very well, because you just don't know what the skeletons are in the closet. Let me say that. I've had some pretty, on paper, they looked very good.
Yeah.
And then during their background, something was discovered, and I was like,
whoa,
oh my God. I had this one, he was actually a friend of our family's, and he just couldn't pass the polygraph. We just couldn't figure it out. And then one day I found out why. And I just go, that explains everything. I put two different things together, and I just go, that is it. And I sent the background investigator back into the thing, and I go, ask him this question and then come back with his response. And so we did, and I go, okay, we're done. He will never be back here again. Trust me.
So that's fortunate.
Yeah, it's crazy. So be very careful about who you recommend. And because your reputation, which is the point of this, your reputation hangs in the balance there.
Yeah, I mean, goodness, I mean, who wants to take a bet how many people start homeschooling their kids in Iowa, in that area?
Maybe not, because there's still a significant number of people who believe in the system.
I mean, goodness, there's people that are out in the streets begging to free this guy, to have him come back.
Yep. Right?
Okay.
Yeah, it's crazy.
That blows my mind.
Humans are crazy people.
I don't care if, like, the whole, like, illegal immigrant thing has really very little bearing on this to me personally. Like, it's just the fact that someone lied about their credentials and got into that position. That, I think, at the cusp, like, that's what really bothers me the most.
Yeah, but this is not against the legal status.
Yeah, right.
But I think it was you who asked, well, how does that happen?
Yeah.
What did I tell you?
I did say, I said, how?
How does this happen? And what did I tell you? He comes in on a student visa and
that was in 1999. He came in with a student visa.
And he stays. So
Hmm.
as an example, here is a person who is willing to take risks for his own good. And I get it. I get there are people and circumstances, and it's worth the risk to them. But risky behavior to start something generally lends itself to become riskier behavior or repetitive risky behaviors to continue
It's almost
to
like a
capitalize.
gambling. It's almost like a gambling addiction of like, hey, like I won this, and I'm gonna do it again because
Well,
I
well,
won, so I'm gonna keep risking.
psychologically, it's not really the addiction
Oh man.
thing, but success breeds success.
Right. Right.
So if
Like,
you
hey,
are
I did
rewarded
okay with
for
this. I should keep doing
yeah,
it.
if you are rewarded for risky behavior, then you continue that behavior. So when we're talking 1999 came in, I didn't know that was the time, but I do know that
Yeah.
he came in on before
Yeah, it was 1999.
I asked the question or I answered your question saying this is how it happens, and that was the way that it happened. So I was kind of lucky there. It was an educated guess, I guess. Back then, people checked your immigration status. There's a form that you have to fill out. I have to fill out. You have a on the application. There's a question. Do you have a legal right to work in the United States?
This might be a whole different conversation, but I would have to look into the differences of like, is there a working visa and a student visa? Aren't those two different things? Or can you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There are several different statuses that allow you to work in the United States.
Hmm. But it's usually only for like a certain amount of time, and then you have to like renew it.
Renew it or go home.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And
So
so there's an expiration date on all of those statuses until you get a permanent visa or a citizenship or what have you, right? But I have to answer that question. Do you have a legal right to work in the United States? Yes. Can you establish it? Yes. How do I
mhm.
establish that? Here's a birth certificate.
Yeah,
Here's a passport,
documentation.
right? Here's documentation, right? So
Oh man.
that system failed many, many times. And I guess that's the point. It's not the actual fact of the immigration status, it's there were conditions for his employment that people failed to verify over and over and over again for unknown reasons.
Let's move on to the other story that we have, which was also national news. This happened on Sunday, so a few days ago. A man drove his pickup truck through a church and then basically set the entire building on fire using probably gasoline or some other propellant of that nature, and then also pulled out a gun. I can't remember what it was specifically. I can make assumptions, but started just shooting into the crowd of people. A bunch of people were injured from the gunfire. Two people were killed from the gunfire, and then two people were killed, presumably by the fire.
Was there any injuries or deaths related to the vehicle driving into the building?
Not that I have seen. No,
Sure.
I bring this up. I mean, obviously, it's not a school thing, but it's not to say that it couldn't happen. But
It's transferable.
it's transferable. And I guess what's, I'll say, interesting about this is, and I was talking to you about this before, of that it wasn't just like he walked in with the gun, or it wasn't that he just lit it on fire. It wasn't that he just rammed his truck into the building. It was all three. So he had three different means of like assault.
Yeah. Did he commit suicide or what was the deal? Or was he arrested? Do you know?
I want to say the police dealt with him. While you're talking, I can look it up.
He's no longer an issue to us, right? One way or the other.
Probably not.
What's your point here? Is that the number of different modalities
I guess I'm almost like transferring this to like how we do scenarios, how we do tabletops, how we do drills. And
Uh-huh.
this is a crazy what if. Like, it's not just a what if we have an active shooter? What if the building catches on fire? What if someone takes a truck and rams it through the building?
Hmm.
It's what if, and then what if like stacked on top of each other.
We've had several of these incidences where there's been multiple modalities. In fact, as I mentioned to you in pre-production here, I wanted to make it sound like we were more
I
professional
was just
than
about
we
to say
really
pre-production.
right. Pre-production.
I mean, we have over 1,000 followers, so subscribers, so
That's awesome, right? And we're getting more and more every day. The incident that I was the incident commander for in California, that dude in his plan had 4 different modalities
are
planned
you
out.
are you able
So,
to tell us what those were?
yep, firearm, knife, vehicle, and a firebomb.
Wow.
The firebomb was not really thought out well. I think he was just going to light the sorority, which was his primary target, on fire.
Hmm.
And I don't think he really thought that through. He had all of the stuff to do it, but when he started his rampage, for whatever reason, he didn't take that with him. But we found it, and we found it in his manifest that that was his intent. So
Hmm.
we know that that was his intent. We don't know why he chose not to take it. The interesting thing to me about my incident was it is almost, regardless of how hard we tried, it is almost always classified as an active assailant, active shooter, active violence, however you want to call that piece of it. But the reality is, there were 6 innocent people killed in that incident. There were 6 killed and 14 injured,
Wow.
not including the suspect himself, who self-inflicted gunshot wound. Exactly half of them were killed and injured by firearm. And the other half was by some other method. But everyone concentrates because of the politics around gun control. Everyone focuses almost entirely on the shooting portion of it.
Yep.
But this was one of those cases that there was 3 people killed by gunfire, 3 people killed by stabbing, 7 people injured by gunfire, 7 people injured some other way, most of which was by being run over and hit by a car. When you talk about what ifs, focus on the methodologies. What's the potential? Because this is going to be part of this conversation, I think, is how do we classify violence? And
Hmm.
how do we classify our response to it? And is it different for different acts of violence? The answer probably is yes, but the result is the same, if that makes sense.
Its impact on you is going to be the same.
Yeah, yeah. And we started this new series this past school year of Ask Me Anything. I get questions that are posed either directly to me or through a forum that I belong to, that somebody's asking the forum, what about this, right? Generally, I don't ask a lot of questions, but I do respond regularly. So I take those questions and I start asking them, and then I I use that as some informational stuff. So in this case, one of the forums that I belong to, somebody asked, how many of you, or does anyone use domestic violence as a scenario in your school safety planning? And there were some responses to that, and you can kind of tell by the number of responses and how quick people respond. you can extrapolate that out over, oh, we have a problem here, right? And the problem that I saw is very quickly people responded, that's such a great question. We've never thought of that. And I said, okay, I haven't responded to it yet, but I will.
I was gonna say, I can't
I
wait to
will.
see that one.
Yeah, yeah. So I, in fact, when I put scenarios together here at Crisis Go for tabletops and so forth, I have used that scenario several times. I have used that scenario when I was at the school district a few times because to me, violence is violence. And we have to start categorizing in sort of this macro level, this higher categorization, easy for me to say, categorization, to understand the potential risk and what we're supposed to do. It is very difficult for people to look at 100 different scenarios and try to compare a, a specific scenario to a specific set of circumstances that are happening before us. Just to give a little plug here, we're right now doing a series on crisis decisions. We'll send out, if we haven't already, we'll send out links to register for that. We just did the first one yesterday, which was the 30th of September. So we have 3 left, and we're going to do them every couple of weeks. So we'll send out registration links. But it's very difficult for us to look at all of these minor details in order for us to make decisions. We got to start, what is this? It's an act of violence. Okay,
Right.
what do we do in an act of violence? We have to start protecting our staff, get them into a lockdown or a secure or whatever is appropriate. When we start looking at that from that level, it's much easier and we move much quicker because we're not marred down in all of these details. If you have a husband and wife who are screaming at each other in the front office and it's looking like it's going to escalate or there's threats being made, does it matter that it's not a student? I don't think so.
No.
If you're torn between that and an active shooter, what do we always do? What's the
Just
worst that could
assume
happen?
what's the worst, and you work down from there.
That's right. It's always easier to pull it back than it is to start escalating. Always easier. So take the necessary steps to protect your people from the worst case scenario, the worst that could happen. Frankly, you're not going to have a lot of these. Some people might have more than others. You're much more likely to have this kind of scenario than you are the true traditional definition of an active shooter. Just because there's so many more domestic violence cases out there than there are.
I mean, every student has at least one parent or guardian, so
Well, they have 2.
yeah, I
Right?
was saying at least
Yeah.
one,
Yeah. So, there's a lot of stress in the world today. There's a lot of things happening today that increases our probability and decreases the stabilization of our mental health and our stressors and all of those things that we're facing today. It's violence. Once we decide that this is something that is escalating, now all we have to do is look at it from the perspective of what are we seeing and what's the appropriate action. And if they're just screaming at each other, get them to move outside. If they refuse to move outside, that's an actual escalation.
Yeah,
It is the refusal to follow direction. You say,
Yep.
hey, dude, this is not appropriate here. And they disregard that, they've just escalated. And here's the thing, that our inclination is to make a threat back to them. You guys need to stop this, or I'm calling the cops.
I was just about to ask you about this scenario.
right? There is no time for that threat.
Right.
You may not want to do what I'm about to tell you to do, but this is what you should be doing. You guys need to leave. I have just called the cops.
Yeah.
Do you see the difference there?
Yeah.
This is not a time for you to make threats.
Negotiate with them. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, you don't. No, I'm really going to do it. Disregard. You guys really need to leave, or I'm calling. As soon as if you say you need to take this outside, or you guys need to calm down, and they don't, from my perspective, you're dialing 911, and then you have to decide whether or not to press the alert for a secure, a lockdown, a hold, whatever is appropriate for you under your circumstances and according to your policies and training. Is because if they're inside the building, they're inside the building. That can escalate very, very quickly without getting into the whole gun control issue. More and more people are carrying firearms today.
Yeah.
Plain and simple, for whatever reason. Yeah. And I'm not going to get into the politics of that. More people are carrying firearms. That includes people who are likely to engage in domestic violence.
I'm
just saying. So you might have a gun in your building and not even know it. That might be part of your domestic violence dispute. The question in these cases often comes up is, okay, how do we mitigate this? How do we prevent this from even happening? Some of this is going to require the cooperation from one or both parties. If there's a notification of a dissolution of the marriage, which oftentimes does come to the school because it involves custody, visitation, and those types of things. So oftentimes you get those. So if there are custody orders, which almost 100% of the time there are in dissolutions, is the school has to abide by those custody orders. There are often restraining orders and protective orders and stay away orders and whatever you call them in your jurisdiction that says only a certain person can come and pick that child up, that the children of that couple, and at any one given time. So you don't have both of them trying to pick up the kid. You're not exchanging custody or visitation during school hours. If there's arrangements that one will drop the kid off Friday morning, the other one will pick them up Friday afternoon, that's a whole different thing. But you're not sitting there having because this also happens regularly, is you have to have a supervised exchange because there's that much animosity and contention between the two parties. There has to be supervision. That should not be allowed on school campus during school hours. If they have protective orders, stay away orders, restraining orders, whatever you call those in your jurisdiction, whoever is the protected party, the person who essentially holds the order, is the person who should deal with the school. The person who is mandated to stay away
needs to stay away.
That's just something that you guys in the school are going to have to mitigate, and you're going to have to mediate to see who that is and when, and make sure. The other time that you're going to need to figure this out is during emergencies. Who has the right to pick up your child during an emergency? And how do we resolve questions about this? During the emergency is not the time to resolve that.
Yeah, no, that would be poor preparation.
Yeah. So when we're talking about that, this is how, if you understand the circumstances for each of those situations, then you can mitigate those and hopefully prevent them by just saying, hey, you're not supposed to be here. I'm calling the cops. You need to leave. you're not supposed to be here, right? If you have an SRO, that's a quick little get on the radio and resolve that. The circumstances that are difficult are the ones where they're just in that process. They don't have anything official yet. They decided to separate this past weekend, and there's hard feelings there. It wasn't amicable. So those are the ones, and you're just going to have to deal with that. But deal with it correctly and upfront. And if it becomes an issue for you, don't be embarrassed about calling the cops. That's what they're there for.
Yeah.
You get them coming, and that puts everyone on notification that if you're not acting appropriately, we're not going to deal with it. We're going to get law enforcement involved. Universally, the way you have to deal with those, it becomes crazy. But categorize it as violence. It goes onto that continuum, and you can even establish that on its own pathway to violence.
You and your pathways.
I'm just saying, processes, methodology, it becomes much easier to manage if you understand the intervention points.
I'm understanding it more now that you've taught me all about this. So
yeah, I mean, there's a pathway to every incident, and domestic violence is one of those. What's the pathway? It starts somewhere, right?
Yeah.
Somebody was victimized somewhere, whether it was infidelity, whether it was violence, whether it was neglect, whether abuse. If somebody feels victimized somewhere, which turns into a grievance, which turns into planning, research. How am I going to get out of this, right? There's a little bit more emotions involved here, and sometimes it can be much more spontaneous, but there's a pathway. Trust me.
If you enjoyed today's episode, please like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. And if you have any questions about what we discussed, leave a comment on our website at crisisgo.com. Thank you for joining us today, and we'll see you next time on Coffee with Kelly, a discussion on school safety.